Hello, welcome to You Belong Here, creating pathways to belonging for students and staff. This paraprofessional webinar series was designed to be both a live interactive webinar and also recorded and utilized and accessed on our sipimpact.org website for future use. We're thankful for your joining us today. My name is Megan Gross. I am a program support specialist at the El Dorado County Office of Education for the Supporting Innovative Practices project. My partner, Thomas Veloso, is also a program support specialist here in El Dorado County, and you'll see him in sessions 2 and sessions 4 of this series. We're also wanted to make sure that we thank North Inland Special Education Region SELPA for their partnership and idea about topics and how to design this series. This series was designed to support districts in the North Inland SELPA, and then we decided that this would be valuable information for all instructional assistants, paraeducators across California. At SIP, we are committed to upholding human dignity by challenging exclusionary practices through systemic change and advocacy, ensuring all students, particularly those with disabilities, have the access, support, and opportunities needed to achieve fair outcomes and a true sense of belonging. We believe it is essential that we innovate, we elevate the voices of the disability community so that we can have a profound impact on all of the students we serve. Our project is funded by the California Department of Education, Special Education Division. What is SIP? Well, if you go to our website, www.sipimpact.org, you're going to find a wealth of information, and we also have included a one-pager that you can access and learn more about our project. We provide free technical assistance to school districts, county offices of education, and special education local plan areas across the state of California. We provide our support in tiers. Tier 1 is no-cost professional learning that's offered in person and virtually, like you are experiencing today. It's open to any school community throughout the state. We also actively share and archive our resources on our website. And we're very active on social media on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll follow us. In addition, SIP is very happy to be the home of the Special Edge newsletter published by the California Department of Education. And you'll find on our website the SIP and SAM Inclusion Podcast. Tier 2 is a support that is designed to be direct technical assistance to grantees who are grants of the California Department of Education. They might be a school district, a special education local plan area, or at the individual site level. We provide personalized, targeted professional development for school districts, leadership team strategic planning, and the California Department of Education provides these local education agencies with grant funding. In addition, we also provide Tier 3 support, and these are districts who are involved in Level 2 intensive compliance and improvement monitoring through special education. We also are delighted to be a part of statewide committee memberships, and we also provide specially designed technical assistance at the request of the Department of Education. Today, I wanted to let you know that while this series was designed for a live audience, we also wanted to make sure our resources make sense when they're viewed in a recorded fashion. When you see chat alert come up on the screen, this is a wonderful time for you to pause and take some time for reflection. If you are watching this independently, I encourage you to have a notepad with you so you can take some notes as we will have multiple opportunities for this reflection opportunity. If you have the opportunity to watch this recording with a group of people, we really hope that you'll take that time to pause the video recording and engage in a conversation with your colleagues. All resources discussed during this session are included in our Padlet, which is available for all to view. The link to our Padlet is available here in this QR code, and it is also available on the link below. I'd like to highlight the Padlet so you can see how the materials are organized for this session and also for the 3 following sessions that make up the series. So here you will see this is our Padlet that has all of our session materials. It is not in chronological order, it is in order of the most recent to the original. So you'll notice under session materials that you'll want to scroll down all the way to the bottom. And we have our slide deck here that we are looking at right now. There's also a survey, which you are welcome to complete, but it is not a requirement. And there is also a certificate of completion that you are welcome to download and print after you complete this session. We have a variety of resources. These are disability resources in general. Session 1, Belonging and Relationships, is what we will be discussing today and the resources that you will need to engage in today's learning. All right. So I wanted us to start this session with a voice from the disability community. Emily Ladau is somebody who, if you don't know, you should Google her. She has written an incredible book about demystifying disability and offers us this powerful quote today. Educators should always remember that students who require various forms of special education are equal to all other students. A phrase does not define a whole person. So we want to take that with us today as we begin this session on belonging. None of us want to be viewed, or I should say, probably likely none of us want to be viewed only by one singular identity. We are complex, unique individuals who carry multiple identities and intersecting identities. And we appreciate Emily's reminder about that, especially for our students with disabilities. Today, for this session, these are our 3 outcomes. We'd like you to have time to reflect and make connections to our work and lives through the quotes of disability activists. We're going to learn and be able to demonstrate knowledge of preferred disability language. And finally, be able to engage in learning about the dimensions of belonging and identify at least one way that you can support a student to be known and accepted at school. Let's begin with our first objective, centering the voice of the disability community. You'll see that we have a collection of quotes that are available on the Padlet that we just showed. The activity is to be able to review the disability quotes. And as you're reading the quotes, take time to reflect. What surfaces for you? What are you thinking about as you read this quote? What connections are you making to the quotes? Is it related to something in your professional life, at work and school? Or is there a personal connection that you have to what you're reading and learning about? We encourage you to take time to, if you're with colleagues, to reflect individually. You could use Post-it notes. You could also print out the materials if you would like that are on the Padlet. And or if you are independently, take that time to just take a note and reflection. If you're unable to access this document here on our slide, I am going to read for you 4 quotes that stood out to me as really powerful and relevant to our work as paraprofessionals. Quote number 1 comes from Kyle Kachadurian. He is a co-host of the Accessible Stall podcast. Overthinking is one enemy of disability etiquette, but so is making assumptions about what a person wants and needs. Of course, individuals with disabilities want to be treated like everyone else. But when we say that, we don't mean, quote, treat every person exactly the same. We mean recognize our humanity and meet us where we are at. You may want to pause and take a moment to reflect on Kyle's words. Quote number 2 comes from Neil Marcus, who was an actor and playwright. Disability is not a brave struggle or courage in the face of adversity. Disability is an art. It is an ingenious way to live. So take a moment now to pause and think about the framing of disability that Neil Marcus has identified. Quote number 3 is from Stella Young. People with disabilities are not broken. We are not problems to be solved. We are not pity stories. We are not brave. We are not inspirational. We are people. Thank you, Stella, for that quote. And finally, quote number 4 comes from author, editor, and disability justice activist Alice Wong. And Alice says, the story of disabled success has never been a story about one solitary disabled person overcoming limitations, despite the fact that's the narrative we so often read in the media. The narrative trajectory of a disabled person's life is necessarily webbed. We are often only as strong as our friends and family make us, only as strong as our community, only as strong as the resources and privileges we have. So take a moment as we finish this final quote of our activity and really think about the community that you serve and the community that you live and work in. And how do we provide support to students with disabilities, to our neighbors with disabilities, that are focused on providing not this quest for extreme independence, but this opportunity to be interdependent and to work together to support one another. Here's another reminder that this is a great opportunity to take a moment to pause and reflect and make connections to the quotes from the disability activists. So, we know that as paraprofessionals and educators supporting students with disabilities, that belonging is key for student success and outcome. We're going to be talking about how we can support and promote belonging from within our role as paraprofessionals. But first, in order to do that, we have to pause and take a moment here and think about the term ableism. This may be a new term for some of you, and so I'd like to read kind of a definition of what ableism is. At its heart, ableism is rooted in the assumption that disabled people require fixing and defines people by their disability. Like racism and sexism, ableism classifies entire groups of people as less than and includes harmful stereotypes, misconceptions, and generalizations of people with disabilities. So, when we think about what is ableism, unfortunately, ableism is really implicit and pervasive throughout our culture here in the United States. And if we think about just the language we hear on television, in stores, at school, across our communities, we have likely heard many of the words that are listed here. Words and phrases such as, that's so lame, you are so retarded, those are county kids, kids aren't my responsibility, students with special needs aren't ready to be included. It's like the blind leading the blind. Your child can't. Can I pray for you? I don't even think of you as disabled. So pause for a moment. How many of you have heard those phrases around your school communities? And I think, right, I don't know what SPED kids means, but it has become our default language way too often, especially in schools and school districts. And so, really being mindful about the language we use is so incredibly important because it is so implicit and something we have to actively think about and engage in using appropriate language. These ableist phrases become microaggressions. They're subtle, often unintentional actions or remarks that communicate negative beliefs or derogatory messages to individuals based on their marginalized group. The impact can cause harm to someone's identity or reinforce stereotypes. And that's really important for us to think about as paraprofessionals. The language we use are models for the other students that are in the classrooms and lunch areas and playgrounds of the students that we support. And we want to make sure that we are empowering our students, we are embracing their humanity, and treating them with the dignity and respect that they deserve. There are in the disability community two tracks, if you will, to think about how to utilize appropriate language that honors and supports people with disabilities. We have person first language, which is where you make sure that the language you're using identifies the student first. So, for example, a student with a disability, a student who receives therapy services. That would be person first language, putting the student first. Another um, avenue, another way to use appropriate language is identity first language. And these are cultural norms of disability communities um, and also personal identity preferences. So many folks in the deaf, blind, and autistic communities prefer that their identities come as the first thing you might hear. So a deaf woman, a blind man, an autistic woman, because they feel that these identities are core to who they are and do not need to be separated out. I have included a video from not that's entitled "Not Special Needs." It was for World Down Syndrome Day several years ago, produced by an organization called Core Down. And I highly encourage you to take a moment here to pause our recording and watch this video linked in your slide deck from YouTube. It's a really powerful video about the euphemism special needs and why it is okay and very helpful to say the word disability. So take a moment now, pause, watch this video, and then come back and we'll carry on with our session. So I wanted to provide some examples and reminders of which language we can be using. So we have commonly used and commonly heard language here on our left, right? We have often heard differently abled, special needs. Unless these are preferred methods of referencing an identity, we would want to use disability or disabled, or person with a disability or disabled person. Way too often in schools, we hear the phrase low functioning. And what does that mean? What does it mean to be low functioning as a human being? And so, what we need to be talking about, because often that's not what we mean. We don't mean to be negative about our students. We need to be able to describe a certain thing a student needs. So, the preferred language would be to say a person who was unable to fill in the blank, or a person who has high support needs in a specific area. In addition, it's really important that we're really mindful about the language that we use that has become so prevalent and persistent in our vocabulary in America. And those words are when we talk about people, when we talk about places and things, words such as crazy. um, if we're talking about a person, we should be referencing that perhaps this person has a mental health disability. Oftentimes, we're using crazy when we mean to describe something that is out of the ordinary, something that is not what we expected, or maybe something that is a wild, wonderful event. So, being really mindful about our language. Rather than saying disturbed, again, you could say somebody who has a person with a mental illness or a mentally ill person. And finally, emotionally disturbed was language that used to be utilized as a disability category, and it is no longer a federal definition of a disability. And so in the state of California, this is now referred to as an emotional disability and as a qualification for an IEP. We have provided this resource here to you. It's the Stanford Disability Language Guide. And I highly recommend that you download it. I have provided a tinyurl.com where you'll be able to access this resource. It provides those similar columns that I just showed you of like the language we are used to be hearing and the language that is preferred language to members of the disability community. And as always, we have to be mindful that language is dynamic and it changes. And so it's very important that we make sure that we respect the wishes of the individuals that we work with, that we support and serve, and ensure that we are using language that they identify with. So, as you look at this resource independently or with your colleagues, I encourage you to look at these three questions. What new learning has surfaced for you? How does this connect with your work? And how might you use this resource? Now, we want to be mindful that we need to take action and disrupt ableism. However, there are different ways to do it. And it's really important that we do this without shame or judgment because we are all learning and we are all growing. So calling in is one way where you have a one-on-one or small group conversation to address an individual or group's harmful words or behaviors. And this allows this conversation to be strengths-based and what we could do instead the next time. Versus calling out, which is where you bring public attention to an individual group or organization's harmful words or behaviors. And there are times that you can call something out in a way that is respectful and ensures the dignity of the person or the individual group that you are calling out, but just being really mindful about how that is done. I've included a resource here for you called Calling In and Calling Out Guide. And this is an incredible resource from the Harvard Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging team. And it really provides some great examples here about like when should I consider calling in versus when should I consider calling out? When do I need to do that? There's also some role playing here that you're able to do and also some practicing about what happens if someone calls me in or out. So I highly encourage you to download this. You can access this guide right here from this slide deck on the Padlet. Now would be a great time to take a pause and reflect and think about what are some other phrases, some other tools that you could add to your positive reframe word bank. Perhaps think of students that you supported last week and perhaps language that you may have heard and what could have been said instead. Or perhaps language you may have used as well that you want to shift and be able to put into practice because it is so pervasive in our culture to utilize many of these terms, or if we don't utilize them, we hear them. And so it's really important. I know me personally, I actively think about what is that I'm actually trying to say and how do I need to reframe this so that way I'm not unintentionally using an ableist microaggression, right? Because these are often unintentional phrases that are used. And a reminder that we've talked about already, but it's always best to ask a person what terms work for them based on their own lived experiences and identity. And remember something also that disability is confidential information, and that's something that we make sure that we protect at schools, and that we don't disclose to others who don't need to know that information. And those of us who are supporting young children or children in elementary school, they may not know that they have a disability, and so they may not be able to answer these questions for you. And in that case, you would want to talk to a student's case manager um, or a school psychologist or school principal to find out what is the language we use here at this school. All right, and now we are going to transition to belonging. And this is one of my favorite aspects of preparing and implementing inclusion. And we're going to start with this quote here from the text Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity by Cobb and Crownapple. Belonging isn't just a nice sentiment or a word on a Hallmark greeting card. It's a need that's hardwired into human beings. Like neglecting the need for food or water, neglecting belonging is hazardous to our health. In fact, it's lethal. Because this is so incredibly important to our development and our well-being, there has been research on belonging and how it connects particularly to students with disability. And this was done at the TIES Center at the University of Minnesota in partnership with Dr. Eric Carter, a well-known researcher in the area of inclusive education. And so we're going to be exploring their model for belonging, which is called dimensions of belonging. There are 10 dimensions of belonging that have been identified through this research and at the work of the TIE Center. And so we're going to go through the first 5 here. Be present, being involved and each and every day in the same places as everyone else in your school. So this means going to the same playground as your grade level peers, eating snack and lunch in the same places as grade level peers, being in general education classes and other community events that general education peers are also present and included at. Invited means having your presence or participation sought out by another person. Welcomed, being received by others with warmth, friendliness, and an authentic delight. Known, being seen as a unique individual and appreciated for all of who you are. Accepted, being embraced gladly without condition and viewed as an equal. And while these dimensions of belonging that we've just discussed, these first 5, are explicitly connected to how we ensure that our students with disabilities feel included and a sense of belonging at school, I also think as an adult, as a wife, as a mother, as a teacher, I also want these things, right? I want to be present and to be involved where my colleagues are, where my neighbors are, where my friends are. I want to feel welcomed. I want to be accepted for who I am. So let's discuss the next 5 dimensions of belonging. The next 5, to be involved, to be actively engaged with and alongside peers in shared learning and common goals. To be supported, having the individualized resources needed to reach one's full potential and thrive in everyday life. Heard, having your perspective sought, listened to, and respected. Befriended, having peer relationships marked by mutual affection and reciprocity. Needed, being valued by others and considered an indispensable member of the community. These 10 dimensions of belonging are so incredibly powerful for all students and for all staff that you work with. We all want to be heard at work and have the supports to do our job well. The same is true for our students. They want their voices to be heard, whether that is a voice that is through gesture, through American Sign Language, through visual supports, through an iPad, or through speech. We want our voices to be heard. So let's do an activity now where we get to engage further in the dimensions of belonging. You'll notice here that I've created this activity where we have an online spinner. And so I encourage you to pause the video in just a moment and go to our slide deck. You're going to go to our online spinner that has the 10 dimensions of belonging. And I would love for you to be able to reflect or to share with others your own personal experiences connected to the dimension that the arrow landed on. And share with each other what it feels like to be befriended. When was an opportunity that you had and an experience where you felt accepted or needed or involved? And then return to our slide deck so that we can debrief that conversation. Our focus today is to look at these 2 dimensions of belonging, known and accepted. And these ones, as paraprofessionals, paraeducators, instructional assistants, are very much within the realm of our influence as a way to be able to support our students to be seen, as a unique individual and appreciated for who they are, and also to be accepted and to be embraced within their classroom community, playground, extracurriculars, as somebody who is embraced without condition and viewed as an equal. Please take some time right now and discuss with your colleagues or self reflect some actions that you could take within your professional role to support students in being known and appreciated for who they are, or being accepted within your school community. So perhaps it might be that you make sure when you're in classroom spaces that you not only support students who you have been a kind of assigned to based on their needs, but you are supporting all students within the classroom environment and the teacher as well, to make sure that everybody knows that accepting help and having help is a value for everybody. There are many other ways that you might help your students to be known. Perhaps you share the interests that they have with peers to help make connections. I know personally, I've always been really incredibly grateful when someone is able to match an interest that I have with another friend. I am an avid reader, and whenever I get a chance to be connected with someone who likes to read the genre of books I do, I always want to swap titles and books, and our students want to do the same thing. And so, being able for peers to be able to see each other and learn about each other's interests and hobbies or pets. Pets are a big one, especially with our little students. That's really incredibly important and a gift that we can help in making that connection as paraprofessionals. Now, I wanted to share some final additional strategies to help build these connections and sense of belonging. One is intentional praise. And so it's the research is very clear that that our students really need to have specific feedback. If you say, "Oh, good job, nice work," that doesn't actually have the impact that we want it to have. And so we want to be specific and say, "Wow, I really like that you took some time to edit your writing, and I see that you now have all capital letters to start each sentence. Like, that's fantastic." In addition, we want to make sure that we are being mindful of how much praise we are providing. And this graphic helps us think about that. How do we inflate positive reinforcement? And I love this analogy of a balloon, right? Imagine praise as a giant, brightly colored balloon. And anytime a correction is given, pop, one of the balloons pops. And so we want to make sure that we have a huge collection of balloons of praise. So that way, when we get some corrective feedback, it feels not as impactful, right? Because I still have several balloons of praise and not just a lot of correction. So you'll see here in this graphic that the recommendation is a 4-to-1 ratio. So that way, throughout the day, students are hearing the things that they are doing well, their persistence, how they're sustaining effort, their kindness, right? Those character traits that we value. Whereas if we're random and less intentional with our praise, this could unfortunately result in higher rates of criticism for students and less positive reinforcement. And so there is less support when you hear that correction. So here are some tips for how to make sure that praise is effective. Our praise has to be seen as sincere, earned, and truthful. Our students, I don't think there's anyone better at sniffing out inauthenticity than a student. And so we want to make sure that we're praising for real. It doesn't need to be directive. Good writing, write that legibly every day, right? That comment, while it started with wonderful positive reinforcement, it then has this negative follow-up sentence. Well, I hope you do that tomorrow. And if we want to make sure that we're praising our students, that's not helpful. We want to make sure that we're focused on the process, not on the ability. I have my own children here at home, and I think about this all the time when they come to me and tell me a grade. Like, what does a 10 out of 10 mean? Show me what you worked on. How hard did you work? What did you learn from this process? Because we're not always going to get a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10, right? Some days we're going to get a 1 out of 10, and we want to make sure that we can bounce back from that. Immediate praise is also incredibly important, right? We need to catch students in the moment and celebrate so that the context makes sense. And praise is also effective when it's not expected, right? We need to keep our students on their toes in some regards and make sure that that praise isn't something that they come to expect, but rather it happens out of the blue, and that's truly meaningful. In addition, the praise must be behavior specific. So this helps students learn what positive behaviors look and feel like, right? These can even be positive academic behaviors. As the example I gave earlier, editing your writing, having capital letters, periods, punctuation, right? That's what positive writing behavior looks like. When we are positive, when we're behavior specific, it also increases the likelihood that students will engage in these behaviors in the future. So in order to give behavior specific praise, you want to praise immediately when a student has done something well. Use the student's name and use an authentic, positive, and warm tone of voice. Tom, I very much appreciate that you cleaned up all of the materials from our art project. High five. Thank you for doing that. Brief, it takes just a few seconds of our time, and its impact can go far beyond what we might see. We have included a few other resources on our Padlet. The first one is positive greetings at the door. How do we welcome students into our classrooms? Do we say, "Hi, welcome, I'm so happy you're here"? Or do we say, "Well, guess you're not late today, that's great"? Right? We want to make sure that those first connections we make with students, whether we're in early childhood, elementary, and we're seeing students at the start of the day, or maybe we're in middle school and high schools, and we're seeing students after lunch, right? Those welcomings are incredibly important. There is also a strategy from Dr. Zaretta Hammond called trust generators, and that is also in your Padlet. One of my favorite strategies is the 2 by 10 strategy. And that is also on the Padlet and really helps us think about for 2 weeks identifying one focus student who we could spend 2 minutes each day talking about something the student is interested in: sports, reading, video games, any of their hobbies, music, just to get to know them and to not spend time correcting them or discussing their behavior. Some additional quick tips for building relationships: ensuring that we're using our students' names and that we're pronouncing them correctly. Morning greetings, making sure that students have information and resources for participating in extracurricular events. Sharing about ourselves, right? If I have a dog at home, I could say, "Oh, I have a dog. Do you like dogs? Do you have a pet?" Classroom meetings that are supported by the teacher, being able to provide some feedback, interest surveys, and classroom traditions. What else might you do to build connection with the students you support? I have no doubt that you have many strategies and tools, or maybe inside high five, um, hand slaps that you give students that you've incorporated into your routine and their routine as well. So take a moment to reflect and share with a colleague of what else you might do to build those connections. All right, now is the time if you're in a group of people to sit and have some time to answer questions and share some strategies. Session 2 has been recorded, and the focus of session 2 is on paraprofessional roles and responsibilities with a focus on support strategies. I hope you'll tune in and have a chance to see my colleague Thomas share ideas and strategies for how we can support students in our classroom. If you would like to complete our survey, there is a QR code or a SurveyMonkey link that you are able to complete. and it will take about 3 to 5 minutes to share your feedback on this session, which helps us at SIP redesign materials and learning experiences that meet your needs. As always, we hope you'll stay connected with supporting innovative practices. Please follow us online wherever you do your social media hunting on Instagram, Facebook. We also have a YouTube channel, which is where this video is housed. You can find all of our resources on the web at www.sipimpact.org, or you could scan this QR code to join our email listserv. We only email when we have an event to tell you about. And if you remember, all of our events are free and open to the public. You can also find us online at sipimpact.org/connect with SIP. Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to learning alongside you in session 2. Have a great day.